This is a podcast about the hardcore community.
Made by and for those who live authentic lives and embrace hard truths.
We archive the stories of the bands and people who make this lifestyle possible. I'm Josh Lyon.
And I'm Greg Benoit.
And this is the Hardcore Archive Podcast. Welcome to another episode of the Hardcore Archive Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Lyons. It's just me tonight. So yeah, this is the Hardcore Archive Podcast. Thanks everybody for listening. I haven't really done too much plugging my other podcast that I recently started, but I'm going to talk about it for a second because I think it relates to what we're talking about tonight. Recently, I started a new podcast called Spreading the Hardcore Reality, and I basically play about 10 to 15 new hardcore songs on every episode, and it introduces not only my listeners, but myself to a lot of new bands. And last month, one of the bands that I heard had a lot of really good breakdowns and other just parts that I really enjoyed. So I started talking to them more, and we decided we would bring them on this podcast to kind of get to know those guys a little bit better. So I guess without further ado, Grave Heist, downstate New York, motherfucker. Let's get it. Let's get it. So we're going to be talking with three of the band members tonight. We're going to be talking with Ethan, the vocalist, Zach, the guitarist, and Dan, the drummer. So I guess we'll bring on Dan first. How you doing tonight, Dan?
Good, man. Josh, nice to see you.
Thanks, man. And Ethan, how you doing tonight?
Can't complain.
And then we got Zach. How you doing, Zach?
Doing good, man. Just watching the Yankees hopefully close the deal here on the Dodgers tonight.
You know, it's funny because I'm a lifelong Dodgers fan, and I knew at least one of you guys would be a Yankees fan, and I was so close to wearing Dodgers gear for this interview, but I try to always be nondescript, so I just want to put the Puma hoodie on because I got a Dodgers hoodie upstairs too, and I was like, we could get the shit talking going. What's the score in the game, though? Because I haven't checked it in a while.
4-1.
Let's go Mets.
Yeah, Volpe hit a 2-run homer in the top of the ninth.
It was 1-1 last time I saw it. I mean, whoever listens to this probably either A, doesn't care about sports, or this game will have happened like 3 weeks prior. So it is what it is. It's funny because I've never talked about baseball on the podcast. And the last interview I did with a local rapper, at the very end, I ended up realizing that he's a baseball fan. So we talked about baseball then too. So
nice. Maybe
it'll become more of a recurring theme, I guess. But like I said in the intro, we're talking with Grave Heist. I heard last month a little more background, I guess, on what I do with the podcast. The other podcast I do, Spreading the Hardcore Reality. I go through Bandcamp like a few times per week and check out all the new releases. And I just happened upon your guys' stuff last month, and I was like, man, there's a couple really, really good breakdowns on here, you know? So I started communicating with you guys and put a song on the podcast. And so I definitely want to talk a lot about Grave Heist, but I know Ethan said at least one or two of you guys has been in some bands before. So let's kind of go through, you know, just previous bands you guys have been in, if any of you three guys have been in any, I guess.
Yeah, definitely.
So I've been in Eyes Wide Shut, which was like a death metal, deathcore kind of thing. That was with my boy Rob Muller, who's now in Groaning Wretch. That's like I'd say like death metal from Massachusetts. But yeah, like that was basically before this, and before this it was that band and a band with Kenny, Concrete Grave, which we like. It was like basically our foray into like being in bands. Like we didn't know a lot at all before then.
And before the other two guys give us their list, I know Ethan, you and I were talking beforehand that you're you have some other musical endeavors that you partake in that don't involve hardcore and metal, I guess, right?
Oh yeah, I do like pop music and electronic music on the side, like just, you know, for shits and giggles. I mean, I am going to be doing something with it, but like for now I'm focusing on Grave Heist. But like, you know, I'm in school right now as well, so I'm kind of divvying up my time between all things. And actually Kenny and I, along with Josh, another guitarist in the band, are doing a shoegaze kind of thing that we're like working on, but that's also on the back burner right now.
Yeah, you don't have any time for that.
Everyone who watches this podcast will see that Ethan's involved with music too. Obviously, we post these on YouTube too, and a few people watch on there, so I'm sure they'll see all your musical equipment behind you there.
Yeah, definitely.
And Dan, what about you? What other bands have you been a part of?
Yeah, it's funny. I started a long time. I'm a little bit, not too much older, but I mean, I'm in my mid 40s, so I know the guys are like early 30s that I'm playing with, and how I met them it was by chance. But bands I was playing with, I actually played in a band with Josh, the other guitar player, for a long time. We took a break for a little bit when I was in North Carolina, but I started out '93, and there was a spot. It was like kind of like a teen center that opened up in Brewster, New York, where I grew up, and didn't last very long. I want to say a little bit over a year, but that's where I really got started. Like, and I met and got to play with some of the bands that are part of this history. You know what I mean? As far as down in this area, you know, like inside the city and stuff. And that spot became like a destination for the bands to like come out of, like, you know, Connecticut and come out of the city, like when Crown of Thorns first popped out, you know what I mean? And Sub-Zero was like the local band, you know what I mean? They were from the town over from us. And I became like friends with those guys through just playing as a kid over there. I mean, when I started playing over in '93, I was only like 14. And that's what was kind of cool about it, you know what I mean? And I didn't know any different, you know what I mean? Compared, you know, I look back on it now and talk about it with these guys too, where I'm just blown away, you know what I mean? All that stuff, and up to this point. But yeah, I've been playing a very long time and played in some bands. Shoot the Messenger was a big band that we played for a long time, Josh and I had, and that went off and on for about almost like 10 years. And that was cool. Some other bands, this band Rise that I play with right after high school. Our singer at the time, he was good friends with this band called Fahrenheit 451 and District 9 out of the Bronx. So doing shows with those guys and opening up with them were wild, man, especially being like 18, 19 years old. And, you know, I feel like such a young kid, but didn't know any better, man. It was pretty crazy, man. I got some nutty stories, but I can go on and on about this, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, I love a lot of that early to mid. I mean, I love all New York hardcore, but a lot of that early to mid '90s, because that's like, I think you're a couple years older than me probably, because I'm 42. But I got into all that shit like in the mid '90s, and that's when all those bands were really popping off. And specifically like that New York hardcore like VHS documentary or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever you mention District 9, I think of the wacky interviews in there for one, but for two, there's like, I forget what the name of the song is, but one of the songs of theirs, when they play live on there, it just sounds so hard the way the guitar sounds on there. And like I said, I love that era of New York hardcore, man. It's so,
and they were a great bunch of guys, man, like big family, like they rolled deep, and like it was cool because it was a different time. I mean, the hardcore then at that time, I had a lot of groove at the same time with those breakdowns were nuts. And I got to hang with Ray, who actually drummed for both those bands. And he's a sick drummer, and watching him and kind of getting the feel, you know, behind the set and watching him play behind the set was just such an inspiration too at the same time. So that was cool, kind of growing up seeing that. And man, they partied though.
Yeah, I can imagine. Because I know the one, did one of those dudes from District 9 end up being in Scarhead too, right?
They Scarhead was funny because they were all around, because the guy Rig Ross, he was a drummer, he played with Scarhead and all. He grew up in two towns over from me, and he played alongside bands in that Boardwalk time in Brewster, and he was playing for Scarhead. I know that I couldn't even tell you, so many people were in and out of those bands, you know what I mean? They kind of jumped around. Yeah,
Scarhead had like 50 members, so
Yeah. And Danny was nuts, man. He was good dude, freaking crazy ass, man.
Yeah. And Zach, what other bands you been a part of, man?
Nothing nearly as cool as what Dan's been through, but I used to play aside from that band Concrete Grave that Ethan and I kind of got our start just in metal in general, but also in us kind of writing songs together that never really stopped, whether we were in bands or not, kind of always just working on little projects here and there. But before the pandemic, I was in a pop punk band actually called Semi Pro. We had a nice, decent little following in the area, but nothing quite as exciting, I think, as this coming up right now for Grave Heist.
Yeah.
All right. So let's kind of start. Go ahead, Ethan. I'm sorry.
Real quick, I should have mentioned that me and Kenny have been like making music forever, like together since I want to say like
high school,
late middle school. Yeah, early high school, I'd say. So that's like we've been doing this for a while.
All right, so kind of jumping into Grave Heist, Zach, I know you were kind of breaking down the geography for me a little bit beforehand. I just kind of want to like double check this for all the listeners. I know we keep saying downstate New York, so are you guys like closer to like Poughkeepsie or New York City, or like kind of in between, or everybody's kind of spread out? Or
that's actually, it was kind of perfect how it worked out, because we were pretty much in between Poughkeepsie, New York City, and then like I guess Western Long Island. I wouldn't quite call it going all the way out east, but it was always easy enough to kind of get anywhere in that area. And then same thing with Fairfield County in Connecticut, getting out there, it was always, we were kind of like right in the middle of all that.
I'm gonna say this, or Steve, our bassist, will kill me. We have to claim Hudson Valley. So we're Hudson Valley. I started the downstate thing on our profiles, and then Steve quickly was like, claim Hudson Valley. So
whenever I hear downstate, I always assume Hudson Valley, but I just always want to like clarify. I mean, I know most listeners are just like, whatever, they're from New York State, who cares, but I'm kind of a nerd with that kind of stuff, I guess. I'm always just like, all right, downstate. I think
all New Yorkers are.
Yeah. Well, when I was younger, I heard the term downstate for the first time, and I was like, does that mean Albany, or does, you know what I mean? Like, it always kind of confused me. So now I have more of a better of understanding of what downstate means, I guess. So all right, yeah. So like I said, what is it? 5 or 6 songs on the EP you guys just dropped?
You 5, right?
5.
Yeah,
5.
Yes.
So, like I said, I pretty much every song has a part that I'm like, man, this is fucking dope, and it's got me thinking, because I know you guys are kind of like toeing the line, like with like metal and hardcore, or like crossover, or whatever you want to call it. And it kind of makes me wonder, because like I've always said, like coming up, like especially when I was younger, that like I don't like metal and I don't like any of that kind of stuff. But like as I get older, the more I hear bands like you guys, I'm like, well, maybe I always did like it and just never realized, So kind of take me through the formation, like I guess, like did you guys have a style like sonically in mind of what you guys wanted the band to sound like when you first started writing material, I guess?
I guess not really. So a couple of these songs that got started like in the, how a lot of these bands have been going lately. I wrote a couple of songs in the middle of the pandemic. Nothing really in mind. I was I guess the crossover hardcore style in general was something I had been listening a lot to. This one band called Cross Me. I don't know, they're like a real small band, I think, from the Midwest. I think they only put out like 1 or 2 things, but that was like the band that I've been listening to a lot for some reason. I don't know why they came up. And that was kind of what got the first song so Territory was kind of like they were the band that I was like listening to a lot. And then I guess the rest of the song kind of just took shape from there.
Yeah, because sometimes there's a few different ways I think you can go with like the crossover, I feel like. And like there's like that Texas style, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then there's like more of like the newer like beatdown style bands where it's almost like death metal at times. And like I said, like I'm not as into metal. So like when I hear stuff like that, I'm like not as interested, but like you guys keep me interested, especially with the breakdowns. Like was that something you had in mind? Like initially, like I want to make sure there's like at least a couple.
Could I jump in and talk, because it's funny how like this went down, because I was just like Shoot the Messenger. I was playing with Josh. Josh, a great friend of mine, man. I've been playing with him forever, and the band was kind of fizzling out. We just recorded 2, man. We were right there, but it just wasn't lining up with everybody, anymore. It just kind of just saw its time. So I think I was sitting around for like 2 months, man. I was losing my mind. My wife's just like, dude, you got to do something, and I went the old school way, because I'm so out of the game trying to find new shit. I don't know where to go. Where do I go? I go to Craigslist. I'm like, I shot in the dark. And I see an ad for hardcore, metal thrash drummer wanted, and influences. There was a couple on there, and then one local band, Mind Force, that's up, in the Hudson Valley area. I was like, all right, this has got to be fucking bullshit. So I responded, and then I couldn't upload some stuff, and then it kept saying like, receiver's not getting it. I'm like, what the fuck? I mean, this is it's just not meant to be. I get a call from Zach, and I'm like, get the hell out of here. He's like, yeah, I got your stuff. We talked for about 25 minutes. He sent me the stuff they were playing. They had a drummer for a little while. I think they recorded a couple songs kind of at your house, right? At your studio?
We didn't record anything yet. So we met a guy named Mark. He ended up not working out. And then we hit up Dan, Dan hit us up. And we were like, automatically, it was like in sync.
Yeah, dude, because I listened to the stuff and I was like, because you never know what the hell you get into, number one, you know what I mean? And I was just like, I'm like, okay, I could do this. But I was listening to some of the drum stuff, and there was a lot of double bass, and I'm like, I could play double bass, but not like death metal style, not metal style. It's just not my thing, kind of like you. And it kind of organically went into our sound now. I mean, and then once we started playing, I think it was within like 2 weeks, they wanted a guitar player too. That was kind of the ad, and I kind of was threw Josh in there. I was like, oh, why don't we get Josh in here, man? And Josh's a hell of a guitar player, man. And then I met Steve, and we all kind of clicked, and the music kind of just went into what it is. And I just like, because there's groove to it. There's still, even though with the breakdowns, and I'm all about that. And that's how I felt like how Fahrenheit was, and Dish and I had, you know what I mean? That kind of era of New York hardcore, to me, even some of the older Madball stuff, you know what I mean? That's the way I kind of felt like it was starting to turn into that kind of sound. And it still has that metal thrash, but it still has that kind of groove, kind of hardcore shit. I love it, man. I'm the biggest fan of this band. You kidding me?
So I want to touch on what you said though, Dan. So you guys had posted a Craigslist ad that Dan responded to?
Yeah. So I don't know. So we posted one Craigslist ad and met Mark. That all didn't work out. He was a great dude and like a great drummer. Just didn't work out. And I don't know if we posted a second Craigslist, but whatever happened with that, that's when we met Mark. And yeah, like Craigslist, right? Like it's fucking seediest place ever, but we like lucked out. And the fact that they came as a pair, and like Kenny and I kind of come as a pair, so it's like two pairs, and then it's Steve who just fits like perfectly as like the missing puzzle piece. And like as I said, like Kenny and I worked together for years, so coming and writing the two demos that Dan was talking about that we sent him originally, that came out like in cumulatively like 2 days. And Dan was stoked on him. He mentioned the double bass. That's all me. I programmed the drums. So I fucking like I went ham. But it's like I think I even said this to Dan when he first joined. I was like, I'm so glad the double bass is gone, because the groove factor just went way up, and on top of that, like it just felt more real.
Well, the reason I asked about the Craigslist thing too, it's funny because I interviewed a band from San Diego like late last summer called Bent Blue, and their formation story is very similar too. Like they had posted a Craigslist ad, and at the time I was like, man, that's so bizarre. I can't imagine like that working out. But that's now twice in a year that I've interviewed. And the program drums, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring this up, because it goes back to New York hardcore. It's one of my favorite stories I've ever heard on the internet or read on the internet. The band 108 was trying out drummers at one point in the late 90s. I don't even know what era it was, but apparently they were trying out Harley Flanagan on drums, and he had listened to the recording of the drums, and he like played like really hard for them, like as hard as he could, like all sweating and going crazy and shit. And he was like, I don't know how the fuck you guys did that shit. Like that double bass is so crazy. And just like Ethan just said, he was like, oh, I programmed that shit. Like we didn't even do that shit. And Harley looks at them all like crazy, like you motherfuckers,
Yeah, dude, it's funny. I said the same thing to Josh. I called Josh, my dude. I'm like, I can't play this shit. I'm like, listen, tell me it's a machine, please. Just tell me it's a machine.
Yeah, when I hear like going back to the Bandcamp thing too, like sometimes when I hear bands now, I'll be like, I can't tell. Like, and they post a photo with the band and it's not a full members. So I'm like, is this real drums? Like, as it sounds like, sometimes it sounds kind of like the program shit or whatever.
Yeah.
So like, it sounds like you guys didn't all quite know each other, like going into all this then. Like, what did everything gel, like writing the music after you guys Dan kind of came through and said he wanted to do this style? Yeah.
I mean, within 10 minutes of meeting Dan, I was like, I think that I texted Ethan. I was like, this guy's going to work out. I don't even think we had gotten through the first song. I don't even know he had finished setting up. I just knew, talking to him, shooting the shit, all right, this guy's going to be our drummer. And then when he said, like, I got a buddy, Josh, he plays guitar. I saw you guys were looking for a second guitar player, just give it a thought. And then he didn't really bring it up. So, like, I mean, Dan was ready to, to do what he had to do to, start playing in a band. We appreciated
Dan
that.
Showed us
a
song Josh played. What
was
the song?
That too.
What was the song?
Which one? I don't remember. Wait.
He played like, it was like Megadeth or something.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
He was I told him that you guys said that he can come to, like, next practice. So he sent me a video of him playing. What Megadeth song was it again?
I thought it was Tornado of Souls, but I don't remember.
I know. You know what? I think it was Holy Wars.
Oh, yes. Yeah, you're right.
And it was a video. He sent me a video, and he was just ripping. And they were like, "Oh, okay, yeah. All right. Bring him in. It was fucking great. I loved it.
Yeah, we needed Josh.
Yeah, I mean, that first practice that we had, it was just Zach and I, and like you said, we just headed off. We ran through the stuff, man, and like I said too, I just made a suggestion, left it alone. I didn't want to push it because I wanted to see how we all, fit together, even Josh was even, going to be a part at all. And it just so happened, man. It was like, I felt like, honestly, and it sounds like that cliche saying that, like, I feel like I've known these guys, but I really do. Honestly, I feel like I've known them for a long time, and it's only been about 6-7 months. But I think just how it worked out and where we are with music and our relationship with music and what we want to do, like, just as a personal level with music and see how far we go. It's pretty much even, man. I mean, we're all on this one page, and that's rare. It's rare. I mean, like I said, I spent a lot of time in a lot of different bands. I was down in NCA, played in this band called Out of Hand, and we were playing everywhere with everybody. I'm not going to go and throw names out there, and these guys knew everybody. It was the singer and the bass player of this band called Nourish the Flame. They knew, like, everybody, and they're fucking dickheads. They're the biggest dicks, except for John. John was cool. I like John. But anyway, and even though they know I tell them to his fucking face either way, it don't matter to me. But I'm just saying, just to get back and circle around about how this band and how it started and everything, where we are now today, I couldn't have put this together trying, if that makes any sense.
So I think with the 6 or 7 months, you kind of started, you kind of set up my next question, I guess. Did you guys start working on the songs that would become Future World Order pretty much right away? Like, is that what like the songs you guys were writing immediately, what you guys ended up recording?
You can take this one.
Yeah, so I think like before we found Dan, we had two or three like solid songs written. I think Rise of Injustice, like we had the bones written. Well. Yeah, Territory and Rise of Injustice, I think, had been recorded like 2 years ago with the versions that we would eventually send over to Dan. And then I think by the time we actually got into like, rehearsing songs with Dan and eventually Josh, we had probably 3 of the songs written, and then the other 2 kind of just I want to say came together within like the first maybe 2 or 3 times of jamming with Josh. Like I remember we recorded 3 songs that we knew the first time Josh showed up, and it was like, how did this work out so perfectly?
Definitely.
Now, kind of getting into the recording aspect of it, I know, Ethan, we were talking before, and like I said, anybody watching YouTube will be able to see that you have like a pretty good studio setup right there. Were you like demoing tracks immediately? Like is that where you guys practice too, or?
So what happened was we would start. Well, so we had Territory and Rise of Injustice completely demoed out. Like we had everything, the bass, drums, guitar, vocals, all of it. And that's what I said we originally showed to Dan. And then after that, it became every practice we would record our entire practice. so Dan could memorize his parts and like we all could memorize our parts, and then B, so we'd have it, so we have an outline of what songs we want to do. So we honestly ended up recording those songs. Finally, we talked to Dan and Josh, who knew Richie, who's a member of Sub Zero, and he has his own studio, and he basically recorded the drums. Once we were all done with all the writing and stuff, we went in to see him, and he recorded all the drums, and basically I took it from there. He did the editing on the drums as well, but after that it was all me. And then with writing specifically, like Kenny, as soon as Kenny sends me something, I write something. I write lyrics. So like, and it takes no time, and then like I'll adjust them over time. But with this, I felt like I was writing on the go, which was kind of nice because I was feeling the songs as they were coming together, and that's basically what fueled my writing process. And the like, I'll say this last thing I'll say, the lyrics are, half of them are like about personal, turmoil, I guess, and then half of them are more about social awareness. And I knew that's kind of the way I go with my lyrics most of the time, even when I used to rap way back in the day. But it's honestly, I love how this process of making songs came together, because it was so fluid.
I'm curious too, and any of you guys can jump in on this question too. Like, we're in the era now, obviously, with like Spotify and Instagram reels and stuff, and bands, like I've been noticing more dropping like 2 and 3 song promos. Like, with you having such like recording accessibility there, Ethan, like were you guys at all tempted to drop like less songs earlier and do like more, like a couple drops at a time, or were you guys dead set on doing an EP and like doing it the way you did it? You know what I mean?
I think we're still set on like dropping little things here and there. Like, I don't think we're gonna treat this like, I mean, I'm sure at some point we'll do a full album, but like for now, I think our goal is to do this. Then we're gonna talk about a split EP, and then that pretty much from there is like whatever happens. So we like short releases. We like short songs.
Yeah.
So short songs, short releases. One thing I really liked about that New Lords drop from Mind Force was that it was like 10 songs, I think, but it was like still like 27 minutes or something like that.
It wasn't even that long. Yeah.
No,
yeah, it was really short.
So.
Yeah, it was shorter than that. Yeah. There's a couple albums this year. I was thinking about today. I don't even know if they're if you would consider them full lengths or like 12-inch EPs, but like there's like 10 songs now from bands that are like 15 minutes. It seems like that's the standard for like a full length or whatever you would call that now.
Because times changing. Everyone's just like, they gotta get through it. Everything's gotta be like this, So I feel like it's kind of just organically going that way, with the time.
I was gonna say I agree with what Ethan was saying. Like, I prefer the short songs. Like, sometimes it works if a band wants to put a couple extra parts in there, a couple extra like slow the breakdown down or whatever, but like when you start getting into those, like I was talking earlier about the death metal, some of the beatdown bands, like when you get into those like 6-7 minute songs, like I kind of tap out there because I don't really have the attention span for that. And like, I didn't really come up on that kind of shit. So it's just not really for me. You know what I mean?
It's gotta be interesting. If it's interesting, like, but again, like you said, like also to make 7 minutes interesting is kind of difficult, like all the way through.
Yeah, I've mentioned on here before, Cruelty from Japan is like the only example I can think of a band that can write like a 12-minute song, and I'm like, all right, those, like, I appreciate those parts. You know what I mean? Like, but like most bands, I'm like, all right, come on, shorten the song a little bit.
I'm with you.
So, like, when, like, I guess you kind of mentioned like you guys pretty much recorded everything with you, and then Dan recorded the drums separately, and then you handle everything else from there, Ethan.
Yeah, so basically we just went to Richie for the drums. He's in Brewster, Barking Dog Studios. We met him through Dan and Josh, and he actually killed it on the drums, man. Like I would argue that he did a better job on the drums than I did on the whole EP. But like, I mean, it came out nice. And I was blown away though to go to him. And actually for the split EP we were gonna talk about, we were thinking about going back to him, doing, because we're gonna do 2 songs each band. So
Yeah, he's got a great place. Richie's got a good spot over there. It's pro. That's all he does. Like that's how he makes a living, and he's got a really sweet spot set up over there. Big studio too.
Is that split EP something you're able to talk more about, or is that something you'll tell me more about after I stop hitting record?
Yeah, we can talk about it. No, we can totally talk about it. We're currently talking with Jawdust from New Jersey. They're tight. You actually should check them out.
Yeah, you like them. Oh,
we love them, and like we're gonna be playing with them on the 10th, actually this coming Saturday at Second Nature, in Peekskill. But yeah, they're awesome, and we just immediately, when after we were done with the CP, I don't even think it was like a couple weeks after, I was just like, we should do a split EP with Jawdust, and everybody was down pretty much immediately. And yeah, so we're gonna go into the studio with Richie, and I think they're gonna record their own 2 songs. So
yeah, that's awesome. That's again, not to keep plugging my other podcast, but that's something that like I've been noticing. Like that's why I started that other podcast. Like it's obviously, I mean, there's 2 elements you can attach to it, like the lockdown, having so much time on our hands, and the turnstile, like just the boom of hardcore right now. But there's like literally like 5 million new bands right now, and all of them are good. You know what I mean? Like I'm not
all
like
of them gone.
I'm not hearing. Yeah, I'm not hearing bands and like, oh man, this shit sucks. You know what I mean? Like I've literally heard like hundreds of new bands in the last couple of years, and they're all like, they all have their different thing they're doing too. You know what I mean? Like everybody has their own lane right now, which is really cool. Like one of the last interviews we did, we were talking about how like it seems like in hardcore now, like the scenes are kind of more like coming back together now. Like there's not as much division with like metalcore shows are separate and like these things are separate. Like it seems like you see more mixed bills now, which I definitely appreciate shit like that. You know what I mean? Because like I don't want to just hear like one style of band, you know. So like, but not to get on a tangent, like you guys mentioning Jawdust which makes me think about like there's so many good new bands right now. It's crazy, you know.
So many.
Yeah, I'm out of the loop. I feel I'm so out of the loop because it's like every time I talk to either Josh or even you guys, you're telling me about, oh man, you hear these guys and you're saying names like no clue, no idea.
Yeah, that's where I was at in like 2020, like when the lockdown first started. Like I was familiar with like a handful or 2 of like the newer like wave of bands that was around then, and like especially like through doing this podcast, like a couple other channels, like I've just gotten pretty obsessive just about keeping track of all the new bands, because like I said, there's so many good ones, and it seems like every day like I find like a new band that I'm like, man, I thought last week had like some solid releases, you know. And it's crazy. So you mentioned the show with Jawdust. Like have you guys played any other shows yet, or is that your guys' first show?
So yeah, we had our first show was back in March. We played with 2 bands that was called Chemical X and the RBNX, right, Ethan? Those were
RBNX, just
RBNX. Oh, not the RBNX. Sorry.
Yeah.
At a spot in Newburgh called Toasted. I think I had never heard of it before. It was a cool spot though. It was like a cocktail bar, and on the other side of it was a Italian bakery. And they like closed off the entrance to the cocktail bar, and you had to go in through the bakery, and it was just like, of course, this is where a hardcore punk show is happening. And if somebody's willing to host it, it'll happen.
Now, with kind of going back to what we were saying, like I would say you guys are more of a hardcore band, like not even really a crossover band. Like there's obviously crossover parts. Like I know people can compare you guys to like early crossover stuff, but I guess my question is like what do you guys like? Speaking of talking like playing shows, like are you guys preferring to play hardcore or like metal, or are you guys going to do both, or you don't really care, you know?
I would agree with you. I would say first and foremost for a hardcore band, I think that we have like the kind of metallic and groove kind of influences and sound on there also. We would fit on a bill with maybe a little bit more metal leaning, but I'd say, yeah, for right now, I think our focus is just to play hardcore shows. But I think also the beautiful thing about the Hudson Valley is that just heavy music in general kind of just melds real well. So I think we're open for anything.
I think that's another thing about us coming together is that we all have like different music tastes. Like we come together on a lot of things, but like we all like listen to all kinds of music, and so I don't think we try that hard to define ourselves as far as like a band and what we're gonna play. I think that just comes naturally, and it kind of just fits into the hardcore realm slash thrash or whatever you want to mix us in with.
Yeah, I mean, I get the vibe, Ethan, that you're into a lot of different styles of music, and I think I mentioned that one of my recent interviews was with a local rapper. So I'm sure in a separate conversation, I could definitely talk to you about rap because I heard you talking about recording rap in a previous life or whatever. So
Yeah, I've done everything from EDM to rap to like I can't even. I mean, I do. I'll just get an idea, and I don't really think about the genre or care what it sounds like. I'm gonna record that idea and just see how it pans out. And like as like I'm in school at Berkeley for music production, so like music production is my thing. And that's I think why I like being in all these bands, because it gives me kind of like practice but also some like portfolio work.
that's really cool, and it's nice like in this era where like recording and learning this kind of stuff is so much more accessible. Like I
So
feel like
much more.
a lot of the stuff that you've read it off, like you've been able to record, like I feel like when we were like children, you probably wouldn't have been able to have the accessibility to do a lot of that stuff, you know what I mean? So
I mean, I even remember the early 2000s. Getting equipment was like you if you were in high school or whatever, you couldn't get shit. Like it was all so much money, and like that's how I got into hacking, to be honest, because like literally I used to download all the fucking illegal software, like every digital audio workstation, all of it. So it, it's a different time now.
Yeah,
yeah,
my buddy got a 4 track with a cassette 4 track. And that's where first recording was on. We did it in his parents' like living room. Kicked them out for the day and sent them to dinner, and then that was it. That's what we had. And it sounded like garbage, but still, we thought it was the best shit ever.
it's crazy though because you hear like the early 80s like AF, like all the like the raw recordings that those bands did, like Negative Approach, and it still sounds good. But like if I hear a band now that records raw like that, like 90% of the time I'm like, man, I don't know if it's like the digital, like the way we listen to stuff now, that I'm just more used to like hearing like a more like polished recording, you know what I mean? Like there's certain bands that I like hearing like a loud like lo-fi recording or whatever, you know what I mean? But like for the most part, like it's just I don't know.
There
Like
was a
I was
time for that. There was a time
yeah.
for that.
It's funny you say that because I was listening to our tape on, because I have like a whole I you can probably see behind me I have like tape reel to reels and like all that shit. But I was listening to our tape on cassette. Like we got them done on cassette. It's actually right behind Dan.
I know. I propped it up.
But yeah, no. So we got them on cassette, and I was thinking, like, man, something about this, the warmth and like the like fuzziness of it. I kind of like our sound almost better on the cassette, but like I totally get the like polished sound. Like growing up, like watching Metal Quality, specifically after, I don't know if you know Joey Sturgis, after he did all those like metalcore albums, like everybody was kicking it into high gear with like music quality, especially in metal. So I feel like now we have this whole polished sound, and like the rawness is starting to fade away, but I kind of want it to stay there a little bit.
There's some bands that still sound good raw, like I said, but like you'll hear recordings now, like sometimes, and it'll just be like, man, I kind of wish it was a little bit like they spent a little bit more time and money on that, you know. But I guess we've kind of talked about the EP a little bit. Obviously, I enjoyed it, and it sounds like you guys kind of like. Did you guys already know Jawdust before that, or is that like how you guys linked up with them? Was like through your EP, or?
I'll take this one because our friend Steve, well, actually, wow, I'm saying our friend, our bassist Steve, is and my friend Vecchi, we're all we all grew up together. Me, Steve, and Vecchi. Steve went to Yorktown. I went to Hen Hud. And we basically knew Danny from Jawdust. Sorry, Vecchi knew Danny from Jawdust, and we got together through him. I think Steve and this other kid Miguel, who's part of Brown Table, which I'll mention later if we get a chance. Steve and Miguel kind of met up with him, and we all basically met up and knew each other through the scene. So like going out and meeting these kids, we found out that Danny was playing the front Jawdust, and they were like a band that was going to be up and coming, and we immediately got excited because they were our friends. Sorry, that explanation was bonkers, but I was like slipping up on my words. I just couldn't.
You got it, man. You got it.
But yeah. So we met them through that, and we instantly fell in love with their sound when they released their EP, and it just instantly was ours.
I'm sorry.
And I guess like jumping back to the EP and the reception, then like have you guys linked up with anybody else? Like has anybody else caught wind of the band since you guys dropped the EP or anything, or have you guys got any like type of press or anything yet? Or
I mean, we got on a couple radio. We got on a radio station in Chicago. We got on this YouTube on it was like a new old school thrash metal kind of thing. And yeah, that's pretty much it. We're trying to.
What was the magazine? No, wasn't there a magazine?
Oh yeah. We got a review on a magazine just recently, Metal Forces. But
we got a nice 7 out of 10. That's right.
We think it's gonna pick up after the show. So
yeah. Sub-Zero's headlining that show at Second Nature in Peekskill at the skateboard park, and it's an all-ages show. It's gonna be good. We got a bunch of bands. Yeah, it's gonna be fun.
So I think this might air after that. I don't know how many we have ahead of this. I have to talk to Greg after we record. He interviewed somebody recently. I don't know if he's edited that or not. Shout out to Greg, who I run the podcast with. He couldn't be with us tonight, but him and I usually try to do these together, kind of have the back and forth. But tonight, obviously, having three you guys, the back and forth is relatively easy to do, obviously. What else do you guys have coming up? Any other plans for any other shows or anything, or just kind of take it as it comes, I guess?
We're looking for shows. So if anybody can hit us up about shows, I'm throwing that out there right now. We are all, I'll mention this right now. If we're doing plugs, I'm like, Steve and I are part of this collective called Brown Table, and we're about to be putting on tons of shows in the Hudson Valley area. We're hoping. I mean, we don't want to counteract, but like we plan on putting out starting a bunch of shows around the area. We have this one coming up at Second Nature, which if this airs or not, whatever. But we want to get all the Hudson Valley bands on and all the bands in the surrounding area too. And we're not just looking for hardcore bands. We're like going for every genre. So like honestly, that's I know Grave Heist is going to be on a couple of those shows, and then other than that, we are looking for shows. So
yeah, it's just different now. I mean, it's harder. We're limited on places to play, and like some of the, especially in the areas here. I mean, Zach and I are down lower towards the city, and you're a little bit closer, Zach. He's in Pelham. I'm in Thornwood, White Plains area, which is like 20 minutes from the Bronx or whatever. There's a handful of spots, but nothing crazy, real small places. They don't really want rowdy. And as soon as you say any kind of either metal, hardcore, whatever, they're like, no, they dealt with it in the past and blah, blah, blah. This thing that they put together, it's like an extra at the skateboard park, with it being all ages, it's fantastic. It just reminds me of like how it used to be, like my son, he just turned 18. Ethan was like, dude, let's pull him in here, man. He put him on and for backing for like the gang vocals and shit at his house. So he put him on, and that's the coolest shit, be able to do that. And like, so having the all ages stuff and getting these kids, like Luke's going to have all his buddies there. My daughter's going to bring some friends, and we got flyers everywhere. And I know what he's trying to do. And it would just be nice for this to ignite like these kids to be like, when's there another one? When's there another one? And shit, if we got to do that once a month at the skateboard park just to get heads over there, the word's going to get around. I mean, even with Sub-Zero headlining this, in next weekend, that alone, should hopefully pull some people too. And with these other bands, I don't really know the other bands that we're playing with, but if they're bringing people in, it's just that networking thing. Hopefully it'll work out.
I think that's one of the problems we're trying to solve as like the Brown Table Collective, is that like nobody wants to host heavy shows, and like especially in the Hudson Valley. I mean, we just lost a chance. That was the one venue that everybody went to, and like I'm not saying it was the greatest, but there were great times to be had there, and like honestly, Brown Table just wants to, like bring that back, bring shows back in this area, and specifically the Hudson Valley and like the close surroundings.
The thing is too, with the chance, just to continue what you were saying, is that it turned a lot of bands, like let's just say like us, off because the way they handled the bands, like the opening acts, let's just say, with the booking, they would give the band, let's say 75 tickets. You had to sell those 75 tickets to be able to open for the headliner, basically. And if you didn't, they're like, you're not either going to get asked back. You're not going to, not that we're even doing it for the money, obviously. Now we want to go out and play, man. We want to get our music out there and have a good time and network and all that. But that's one of the main reasons why I think that place is just going under, because they couldn't get acts in there. You didn't get the headline bands, but you know what I mean? It's like you get these local guys in there. They don't have that many people. We're going to spend $20. You know what I mean? That's fucking ridiculous.
And then apparently it's expensive to book there. So
yeah, it's a nightmare. So I mean, we're gonna go. I'm going. Life of Agony's playing there with Sub-Zero and Sick of It All on August 8th. We're going to that. Yeah, that's gonna be great.
That sounds like a good one.
Yeah.
We have a venue. I'm not going to mention the name. Fuck them. But we have a venue here that does the same ticket bullshit. I think every city has that.
It's like the thing to do now. Yeah.
Yeah. And then I don't know what that fucking wannabe fire festival thing in Kentucky last year was, where that dude was trying to make people sell tickets to. That fest didn't even happen. That weird like deathcore, metalcore fest or whatever.
Yeah, that's a little weird.
But I'll plug it too, because I meant to mention at the beginning of the episode, I'm doing a show in Rochester on July 29th. So I'll hit you guys up about something on the summer or something. I already have that show booked in July, but and there's a few other people here that book shows. I mean, you guys are probably like 4 or 5 hours away from Rochester at most, right?
Yeah, about 6 hours.
6. Oh yeah, because you're closer to New York City. Yeah, you probably are closer to 6. But yeah, I'm in the same boat. Like we're trying to start, like there's a few people that have been booking shows here, but I've been wanting to get back into do it. And I've been talking about like getting back into doing shows since I started this podcast pretty much. And I'm kind of encountering the same thing. It seems like most of the good all ages venues here are similar to like that weird, like speakeasy type thing that Zach was referring to earlier, where like somebody's doing a show in a bike shop in a few weeks. That's probably a cool venue, but it's like not downtown. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know if I'm just picky, but like I prefer for the venue to be like downtown if it's going to be all ages, you know what I mean? Where people can get to, like not in like some weird like side area.
Absolutely.
So like the venue, most of our like clubs or bars are 18 or 21 plus. And then the other thing I've noticed too, I don't know if this is like people trying to catch up from COVID and the pandemic, or if it's because like some of these clubs don't know me and they think I'm like a mark or whatever, but like venues caught like are charging more now. Like when I was trying to book, like, cause I was trying to put something together for the holidays, like something bigger, and they want like a couple of our bigger venues, which I've never even really looked at. Like they were like the prices they wanted. I was like, yeah, I'm not doing that. You know what I mean? And like our smaller clubs are still somewhat cool, but even that's like, you know, it's not all ages, you know? So
yeah, that's tough. I understand they want to make alcohol and everything, or, you know, avoid trouble with the minors and shit, but I don't know. It's tough. I mean, some of the places too. I was talking to a buddy of mine, and this is going down. This is what they're starting to do down south, North Carolina areas. That they're bringing back the Sunday venues. You know, where it's like, you know, most of the bars after Saturday, all those people, they're like, yeah, fuck, you know, we're not gonna make any money after 2 o'clock anyway. So fuck it. You know what I mean? If you guys bring the money, maybe we can make it a regular thing.
Yeah,
but it's hard to find.
I don't want to be too negative. Like there are places popping up. Like there's like little venues here and there, and people are working. A lot of people other than Brown Table are working avidly to bring venues back around this area, but it needs to happen.
See, this is how this works. This is why it works, because he's positive and I just start fucking talking shit.
In Rochester, to stay with the positive vibe, we do have a few venues that you could do an all ages show at. I just wish we had like a consistent venue that I could just like have a date like every month, basically, like you guys are saying, like the all ages like on Sundays type thing, and not have to go through the hassle of like, am I gonna have to call 6 different places to get one date for an all ages show? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I think we kind of covered most of the stuff that I would have liked to have talked about. I mean, Dan, I'm sure we could do more of a tell-all with some of those New York hardcore stories eventually.
I know. I wish you would have brought Josh on here too, man. Maybe we could do it again sometime. We get Josh here. He's got some great ones too, man. We got a lot of history together too. So
that's what I was going to say. When you guys, Oh, you're
I gotta shout out some bands before we go. So whenever,
I'll ask you to do shout outs in a second. I was just gonna touch on what Dan said though. Like, yeah, when you guys have more recording shit coming up, obviously, you know, we can definitely do a round 2 and because I'm sure we're just kind of starting to scratch the surface here, you know. But I feel like this was a pretty good introduction to Grave Heist for everybody. Like Ethan and I were talking about before the interview, we'll play a song after the interview. We're still kind of deciding which one we're gonna play. I'll find the right breakdown for all the listeners, I guess. But yeah, before we jump in shout outs and plugs, is there anything else you guys wanted to add to the interview or anything before we wrap up?
I'm gonna say that our 2 new singles for this split EP are wild. Like I'm personally really proud of them. I know the rest of the band, even though they won't say it, is definitely proud of them. They're bangers, so I'm really excited for this new release that we're like working on.
Not to mention the other stuff too. We got more material. I mean, we got stuff in the works. I'm real excited. And also to thank you for putting this on.
Yeah, seriously. Definitely. I appreciate it.
Well, I hope there's plenty of good mosh parts, and I hope you have at least one line that's as catchy as that opening line in the first song. Let's get it or whatever. When I open the episode with, you know. So yep. I like that. Like we were talking about earlier, we're in that age too where you have to, between the social media age and there being 5,000 bands, you have to find some way to kind of stand out right now. You know what I mean? So
I'll say it. Every band needs to say their name in a song. I'm gonna say this. Shout out to Quiet, Gone Mad, New Vision, and Servant of Sorrow. They're all crazy ass Hudson Valley bands, all different genres. Definitely check them out.
I guess speaking of which, anybody else want to give any shout outs, or you guys want to plug anything?
Yeah,
Jaw does too.
And I'll just quickly plug, but I'm actually playing in another band called Shoot the Five out in Long Island. On Long Island. Got to clarify that part. It's like a beatdown hardcore band. Still groove oriented too, because I'm the one writing the guitar parts.
Steve is also in a cover band. I feel like I should mention that. I'm sure you'll see stuff from them too.
Yeah. Also to Sub-Zero for headlining our show this week coming up, and even though I think the following weekend they're doing I don't know if I have it right, but I think it's a 20-year, could be 20 or it could even be 30. I don't know if I have this right. Them and Biohazard doing a show in Long Island, finishing the tour. They're doing like a reunion show in Long Island. I don't know the place, so I forget, but If that, it's not hard to find nowadays. You can find that on the internet, I'm sure.
And it might be a 30-year for Urban Discipline. 'Cause I feel
Right?
like that was 93, right?
Yeah, it has to be then. Yeah, it was because I think Lou, and I don't know if Richie was there too. They were on Brooklyn Bridge when they recorded Punishment, and that was during that tour. So yeah, it's probably, you're right. I think it's 30 years.
I was only 12 at the time, so I got into Biohazard a little bit later. But I think it was around. I feel like it was around that time. I've never seen Biohazard, so I can't really travel very far because my kids are a little bit younger than yours, Dan. But I definitely hope they play. They probably won't because no bands like really want to come to around here for whatever reason like that. But they'll probably just play like bigger cities. But it'll be really dope to see that with them with that lineup,
Yeah. They still freaking shred, man. It's crazy. I love it.
Our Archive podcast is Josh Lyons and Greg Benoit with creative support from Rob Antonucci.
This podcast is a product of the Rochester hardcore community. Theme song provided by Stand Fast.
Visit Hardcore Archive Podcast on Linktree to listen to past episodes.
Follow Hardcore Archive Podcast and Enterprise Hardcore Podcast on Instagram for updates.
If you have an idea for an episode or would like to have your band's music featured during the closing credits, please contact us at hardcorearchivepodcast@gmail.com.